Say, yeah, Adrian, where the Svarim, they're out there. Someone give me one of them for hair. You have one? Yeah, I have one. Thank you.
Sure.
So we are up to ice. Hey. That's on page 212. So up until now, we explained that the deeper reason why other people choose the ministers and the Chacham chooses the king and the mashal, and the same is with Hashem and the nations of the world, is because to be makabel from Klippa, there are two advantages. One advantage is it doesn't require bittul, and the other advantage is that you get much more. And the disadvantage to receive from Kedusha is, number one, it requires bittul, and number two, even if you have bittul and you deserve to get what you get, but you get in a much more measured, calculated way, not in abundance. Nevertheless, the person who chooses Kedusha says, I don't care about the abundance, I'm choosing Kedusha for the right reason, because it's Kedusha. Because this is the Melech, this is the Emes. So therefore, we see the wisdom in that choice. There's a little problem though. In the Medrash, it gives a different reason. It doesn't give the reason of bittul, doesn't give the reason of that you get in abundance. It gives a different reason. It says that the king is someone that doesn't get replaced, and the ministers get replaced. How does that fit into what we're explaining here in the Maimon?
That they walk the Kochavim and the Shemesh, then they will walk then they can change their gods, and like what to give them.
Right. So that's a different reason than the reason we said. In the Maimer, gives a reason because if you worship a Klippa, you get a lot. I'm talking about the Klippa now. They get a lot. And you don't have to have bittul, but the Chacham chooses Hashem. Why does he choose Hashem? Because that's really the emes. But over here, he gives a different reason. He says because the king doesn't get replaced. The king doesn't get changed. How does that reason fit into our reason? So that's what the Rebbe is going to explain now in the Oisei. The reason that's given in the Medrash, why this smart person, why does he choose the king and not in the Sorim? It gives a reason because all the others, they could be replaced. But the king is permanent. The king is eternal. On the surface, you can explain the hashpa, the sustenance that comes from klipa. Even though it's so much more than what comes from kedusha, but it's something which is temporary. Ultimately, it's going to fall apart. Why? After the godly sparks are all elevated, remember we said, how could klipa exist? It's something Hashem doesn't want. It's not connected to Hashem. So obviously there's a certain spark of godliness in it, that for a certain purpose Hashem wants this. That godly spark is what gives life and sustains klipa. When Hashem will take away all those sparks because they'll be elevated, which means they'll no longer be klipa, they'll become kedusha. If there's no longer a godly spark in klipa, then klipa can't exist. So therefore, klipa's existence is only temporary. Is batul legamri, they'll become batul completely. But Nagelis, V'kolishkem and Nagelis, and certainly this applies to a Yid, that even though we said before that a Yid could also get chayis from klipa, shegam achshav shzeh she'yisrael yocholim lekama chayis ma'alum hazo rak mefisha, is only temporarily. In other words, first of all, when you talk about the nations of the world, we see that they're still there, they're still making a lot of noise, and they're still very powerful, and they still think that they're controlling the world. But when Mashiach comes, all this is going to fall apart because their whole chayis is only from Kedusha. And once the godly sparks are no longer in Klippa, because they're going to be extracted and elevated, then Klippa won't have any existence. So all the things that they're doing and all the things that they're having, that's going to become batul. For a Yid, you don't have to wait for loss of love. A Yid, there's a mimer I told you the other day called Kundus Hamayim, where he explains that because a Yid comes from the pnimis of Hashem, so a Yid really, truly can only receive that chayis. And when he gets chayis the same way as klipa, it can't last very long. Ultimately, it falls apart. Ultimately, it doesn't continue. So therefore, this is what the person is thinking, that I'm getting chayis from Kiddush, from Klippa. It's a lot of chayis, but I realize that it's temporary. It's going to fall apart later. That's why I'd rather get from Kedusha. Page 215. The fact that the hashpa, the sustenance we get from Kedusha, right now, it's measured, it's limited, but it's rak achshav, only now. After the source would be revealed, which now it's hidden, and the source is pnimis hamakiv, hashpa megdusha ti beribu godli yosim haribu shanishpa mechitzeri hamakiv. Then Yidden will get much more than whatever you see out there from chitzeri hamakiv. Let me just say one more line and then we'll explain and we'll go back to understand it. Kamayim Razal, page 216. There's a story in Gemara that Rabbi Akiva and the other Chachamim were traveling towards Rome. And as they were approaching the city, they heard a lot of noise. What's the noise? The noise of a city that's alive and well and things are happening. So the other Chachamim started to cry. Rabbi Akiva started to smile. There's a few stories like that in Gemara, that they cried and he smiled. There's another story where they were going to they were passing by the spot of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and they saw a fox, a few of them running through the Kodesh HaKadoshim. they began to cry, and he began to smile. So in all these cases, it was very similar. They said to him, "Why are you smiling?" And he said to them, "Why are you crying?" So they said, "We're crying. Rome. The government that destroyed our Beis Hamikdash, that did all the horrible, evil things that they did, and listen to the sound how they're alive and they have so much going on. Like it's very painful to see that such evil, such wicked people are prospering. They're having a life. Why are you laughing? Why are you smiling?" So he said, the reason why I'm smiling is, and he said these words, this is what Hashem has in store for people that violate his will, how much more so for those that fulfill his will. So we need to explain this a little bit. The other day, we learned in the Maimer that the reason why Klippa can get so much chayes in abundance, even though everything is supposed to be measured according to what you deserve, and that therefore Yid, if he does Torah mitzvahs he deserves, he gets. If he doesn't, then not. So how is it that by the nations of the world they get in abundance? What was the answer? The answer was that they received the chayes from Makiv, right? Makiv is infinite, and because it's infinite, it's an abundance, and if it's infinite, it doesn't depend on the measurement and the capacity of the recipient of the keli. Is this part clear? So everyone asked the question. So that means Yidden are going to get less. So here is a new word that he uses here. I mentioned it then. And that is that in Makif itself, there are two parts. There's the chitzonius of Makif, the external part of Makif, and there's the internal part of Makif. What the nations of the world are receiving is the external part of Makif. What Yidden will receive when Mashiach comes, will then receive from the pnimius of Makif. We'll also get from Makif. We'll also get from this infinite light. But we're going to get from the pnimius of the infinite light. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva said, look at all the abundance that they have, and where are they getting it from? The external part of Makif. So how much more so those that do what Hashem wants, and they're going to be receiving from the pnimis of Hashem's Makif. So what we're going to get is going to be infinitely more and greater than what they're getting. So basically the Chachamim looked at what they saw and they were sad. He looked deeper and he said, when I look at them, I see, wow, I can see from this how much abundance Yidden will get because they're going to get from pnimis HaMakif.
But why didn't get a reward in Alam Haba, not in this world? Like, I mean, in the same abundances, in order us to have bitachon?
Well, I guess part of it is that there should be avodah. If everything would be revealed, if everything would be in an open, revealed way, then there wouldn't be any free choice. So that's part of it. I mean, there's more, deeper reasons that are given in Chassidus why it's that way. But I guess the reason why we're zeicha, why we merit to have pnimis hamakiv, is because we made the choices when things were hidden. To make a choice when everything is revealed, like if you have a few doors that you can go through, and every door is locked except one door is open. I know you made the choice to go through that door, but it's not much of a choice. This is locked, that's locked, the other one's locked. Yeah, of course you go through this door. If the world would be in such a way that imagine a person opens a store on Shabbos, and as soon as he walks into the store, there's an explosion, the store blows up. A person wants to buy something on Shabbos, the money melts, the dollars fly away. You get into your car on Shabbos and the car breaks. I mean, it wouldn't be much of a chira, So if a person gives tzedakah, the next day he's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. If he doesn't give the tzedakah, the next day he loses money. I mean, then there's no free choice. So the Eibishter made the world in a way that we don't see clearly the brachas that we're getting, and we make the right choices in the schus of those choices that we made, even though there's so much galus and we see it's so challenging and all the nisyonis, in that merit we get pnimis hamakiv. And Pnimis HaMakiv will bring bracha, not about beruchnis, also begashmis, but infinitely more than Chitzonis HaMakiv.
Good answer.
Thank you. When you say Pnimis and Chitzonius, it's not always inside the outside. It's like, imagine a person. If you look at a person, the Pnimis is the neshama, and the Chitzonius is the guf. The difference between the neshama and guf is an infinite distance. The guf is flesh and blood. The neshama is a source of life, and that's where everything comes from. The thought, the feelings. I mean, you can't even compare. And then there's more than that. So this is where we're going to get from is Pnimis HaMakiv.
Rabbi Majeski,
Yes.
how is such a create people say such a thing? They're so holy and they say about things that they are gashmi. They get it's not supposed to be we have Ruchani, you have the Torah, that's the best thing. Why would we look about someone else and say?
Why do we want to have good begashmis also?
No, why they say the people will not get they are tzaddikim.
Right.
And
no, both things are true, don't forget. It's true that it's very painful to see such evil people having so much. And it's also true that when Mashiach comes, we're going to have so much more. The difference is how you look at things. One person looks at things the way they are now, and one person has the ability to see the way they are b'pnimis. It's like gamzul tova. Something happens to a person, and he loses a lot of money. So on the surface, there's a reason to be sad. I lost a lot of money. But if you tell yourself that this is really a hidden bracha, and ultimately something good is going to come out, it's harder to see that, even though it's also true. So Rabbi Akiva, he was in fact the one that said the famous quote, Kol ma da'aved rachmana l'tavu da'aved. Everything Hashem does is for the good. In other words, he was so big and so deep. He saw in everything the good in it. So when he saw how much the Goyim are having a good time, what he saw was, wow, how much more the Yidden will have even a better time. And when they looked, they just saw the chitzonius. They didn't see as deep as he saw. I mean, they knew it, but what they saw was painful. He, through looking at them, saw how much more Yidden are going to get when Mashiach comes. I guess, of course, this is the way we're supposed to live. Learn from Rabbi Akiva that when you look at things, you could look at things from one angle, and then it's sad, and you could look from another angle, and there's a reason for simcha. So we have to train ourselves that the positive and the good things are the ones that register.
could there be what is Makif?
What is Makif? Makif is the light of Hashem that's infinite. And because it's infinite, it has no measurement, and it relates equally to everything. So now what the Rebbe explains is this is the reason why the Chacham chooses Hashem, because he says, if I get from Klippa, it's true, I'll get so much more, and it doesn't require so much bittul, but whatever I'm going to get is temporary. But if I get from Hashem, even though it's much harder, I have to work harder, I have to have bittul, and even then I'm not going to get so much, but the little bit that I'll get is going to be permanent. So it's better to get a little bit that's permanent than a lot that's temporary. And especially when Mashiach comes, it won't even be a little bit, it'll be much more than what they have. And that's the way he thinks, therefore he chooses godliness. So the Rebbe says, no, but this answer is not good enough. Why not? Let's continue, page 217. The Medrash says, the reason why you didn't say we're only going to choose Hashem, because it says in the pasuk, Chelki Havaya Omra Nafshi. Muchach, from this it appears, sorry, I skipped something. 2:16. I'm very sorry. 2:16. This explanation is not sufficient. The fees there, according to this explanation, Gam b'chirasa shel hapikach ba'amelech u'b'shpil hashpa shatile al dezeh. So it comes out that the smart person that is choosing the king is also not choosing the king because he really wants the king. He's choosing the king because he wants the hashpa, the sustenance. But he's smarter. He says, I'd rather choose the king because that sustenance is permanent. But that means that he's really no different than the Umas Ha'olam, than the others. The only difference between him, that he chooses the king, and they choose the ministers, they're just looking at things the way they are now, and right now we're getting much more. The smart person, he looks into the way it's going to be in the future. Like the Gemara says, who is smart? The person that sees the outcome. The definition of a smart person is I don't judge things by the way they are now. That right now it's good, or right now I'm having a benefit. Judge by how it's going to be in the future, in the long run, permanently. So therefore, it comes out that the Yidden are no different than Lahavdil the Goyim. They're interested in the sustenance, and we're interested in the sustenance. The only difference is they're not smart enough, so they just go by what we're getting now. And the Yidden look at the future, but otherwise we're both the same. But from the fact that it says in the Medrash, that the reason why Yidden choose Hashem, like it says in the pasuk, Yidden say Chelki Havaya, Hashem is my portion. Muchach, from this it seems, the fact that the smart person chooses the king, is not because of the benefit, and he sees more benefit in following the king. But they choose Hashem because he's the Melech. This means the fact that you didn't choose Hashem, even though we see now that those that don't choose Hashem get so much more and they get an abundance. So the reason why is it's not because later they're going to have more hashpa. The hashpa to those that follow Hashem's will, that comes from the pnimis of Hashem. And the one hashpa Hashem gives to those that violate His will is commanded. It's like somebody throws something behind his shoulder and he gives it to them not willingly. In other words, the real difference is that if I do what Hashem wants, then when He gives it to me with his depth, with His pneumius. If I do something which Hashem doesn't want, I'm also going to get, in fact, I'll get a lot, but it's coming from Hashem's chitzonius. Hashem doesn't really want to give it to me, and doesn't really give it to me with desire, with pleasure, with love, like He gives klipa. He doesn't give it with love and pleasure that He wants klipa. So therefore, I'm going to get chayis, which is not from the pnimis of Hashem. And that's what makes the difference, not the benefit. Are you following me?
Yeah.
Following? Hold on, because we're going to keep moving now. Okay?
So it's not about what you get, it's about the way you get it?
Right. In other words, if I get something from Hashem's pnimius, it means that this is Hashem is giving it with love and with desire. If I get something from the makif chitzonius, it means Hashem is giving to me, but it's really not Hashem, it's Hashem hidden. And I don't want Hashem hidden, I want the real thing.
So that's, I mean, like,
Achorai, right? Hashem's back.
But you still get, like, you get it from Hashem just through something bad, or you get it from Hashem through Hashem? Depends
what matters. If somebody gives you $100, they don't like you, and they're upset at you, but for some reason or other, they have to give you the $100. The judge ruled they have to give $100. What?
Like a parking ticket.
Yeah, parking ticket. So you give it to them, but you have a sour face and you just throw it to them. You won't even look at them. Yeah, here's your money. Or someone's giving you a present, $100. And they give it because they love the person. They have pleasure in giving it, and they give it with a smile. So one person can say, I don't care, smile, I got $100. That's how I get it. That's all. That's true. But if my interest is the relationship, then I'm interested in the smile, and I'm interested in the love, and I'm interested in the fact that it's coming from Hashem. So Klippa, they get a lot, but Hashem's pnimis is not in it. He'd only give it to them outwardly, but he doesn't really want to give it to them. So therefore, they're not really connecting to Hashem. And we get less, but we're connecting to the pnimius of Hashem. And that's more important to me than anything else.
That's also why we learn, like the Jews that learn Chassidus and doesn't learn Chassidus. If you work for like something to get from Hashem, Olam Haba or something like that, or if you do it just to be merkava.
To connect to Hashem, right? That's already on a finer level. So that's why they want the hashpah that Hashem gives to those who do follow His will, even though it's limited and it's less. But because it comes from the pnimis. In other words, the reason is not because later I'm going to get more. If the reason would be because later I'm going to get more, that means all I'm interested is in the benefits. The real reason is because I want to be connected to the Pnimis Hashem. That's what counts for me. And if that's what counts for me, I don't care if I get less, but I'm getting connected to the Pnimis. Then we'll go back to the previous question, but in the Medrash it gives another reason. It says because everything else is permanent, temporary, and Hashem is permanent. It does give that reason. So we have a little contradiction here. First, the Rebbe says that the reason why we want it is not because of the benefit, but because we want to connect to Hashem. But in the Medrash it says that the reason is because these benefits are permanent and those benefits are temporary. So it looks like we are looking for the benefit. You see the contradiction? Okay. So now the Rebbe is going to explain that. The fact that they say that all the other things are temporary and Hashem is permanent, it's not because of the benefit. The intent is like this. From the fact that Klippa will ultimately not be permanent, it's only temporary, that's proof that even now they're not emes. There's a pasuk in Chumash, let me explain it first, then we'll do it inside, that says, Hashem Elokim Chayim, Hu Elokim Emes. That means that Eibishter is a true life, and He's truth. Nothing else is really truly alive and true. What do you mean? There's a whole world out there, and everything is alive, and it's real. It's not imagination. Why do we say it's not true? Being that the Chayis comes only from Hashem, and because of Hashem, that means this in itself really has no chayas. So to give a simple mashal is if there's a wind blowing, right? And the wind blows very strong, so there's a piece of paper on the floor, it gets lifted by the wind, it goes up very high, and the wind is blowing 50 miles an hour, so how fast is the paper flying? Right? So the paper is flying 50 miles an hour. Did this paper become a flying object?
No.
Did it change anything?
No.
How do I know? Could you prove it? Maybe it became a bird.
Depends how well you folded it. Because it's a domain.
But I see it flying. It's flying.
But it doesn't change the תכונות שלו.
How do you know? Prove it.
It will fall. Like it will fly, but then it will fall.
No, the wind is blowing, it's going to fly.
So when the wind stops,
okay. So when the wind stops, it's going to fall down. What does that prove? doesn't prove that when the wind stops, it's no longer going to be flying. It proves that even now, it's not really flying. The wind is flying. And because the wind is flying, this sitting on the wind, it's also flying. But the fact that when the wind is gone, there's no more flying, that's the raya, that's the proof that even now, it's not emes. It's not truly flying. Technically, it's flying. What?
Like the doll walking.
Like the doll walking, right? Technically, it's flying, but it's not flying on its own. It says it's brought down, one of the things in Chassidus are brought down to bring out this point, is there's a Mishnah that says there are certain times where the Torah says you need mayim chayim. What is mayim chayim? You know, the living waters, they have the video. It's from the Chumash, mayim chayim. What is mayim chayim? What? No, I know, but begashmi, sometimes you have to have water for mitzvah, for other things, and it says you need to use mayim chayim. What does mayim chayim mean? The Gemara means it has to be a something that flows and doesn't stop flowing forever. No, the Gemara says if it stops flowing, if it can flow non-stop for 7 years, then it's called mayim chayim. But if it stops once in 7 years, let's say sometimes a river gets dried out, that means it's not mayim chayim. So the term the Gemara uses for these waters is mayim mechazvim, water that lie. They're not true. What do you mean it's not true? There's water there. But the fact that this water will eventually dry up and it won't be there, that means that even now it's not a real metzius. So for example, the neshama and the guf. The guf is alive because of the neshama. So the fact that the neshama gives life to the guf is, this neshama is really the source of life. The guf is only alive because of the neshama. And when the neshama leaves, the guf is no longer alive. That means that even when the neshama is in the guf in its own merit is not really alive. It's the neshama in the guf that has life. And the same thing with everything in the world. And surely klipa. Klipa is not godly. So therefore, klipa has no existence in its own. It's only there because of Hashem. So therefore, even when it exists, it's not really something true. That's why it says in Gemara, Rishayim b'chayeyim kuriyim mesim. Rishayim, even when they're alive, are considered dead. What do you mean dead? In other words, all the things they do, the klipa, the avera, the evil, it's dead, it has no real life to it. But Hashem gives it life. So Hashem gives it life, but it itself has no life. So therefore, what means that when it says that everything is, Hashem is permanent and the other things are temporary, the fact that it's temporary means that even now it's not emes. It's not really connected to Hashem. And therefore, it doesn't really, it's not even now, it's not considered life. Torah, mitzvahs, and good deeds, and the neshama, and the yidden, and everything else, which are permanent, because it's permanent, that means that it became godly, and godly is permanent. You follow or not? Yes? Okay. Let me see the words inside again. Top of the page 219. The fact that it says that all the others are replaced, why does it say that? The intention is from the fact that they're replaced. That indicates that even now they're not considered metzias amiti. They're not considered true. The fact that they have chayes here, the klipas have chayes, and they give so much abundance to those that worship them, but this chayes is not their own. They don't have any chayes. Their chayes is all from Hashem. It's only because they're deriving their chayes, they're nurturing from kedusha. Okay, there's another thing we have to explain. Let's see if we have enough time. That you can ask a question, wait a second, even things that are in Kedusha, they're also only alive because of the Eibishter. So does that mean that it's not really alive? Like Torah and mitzvahs and tefillin, mezuzah, and the Sefer Torah, you say it's not really alive because it's only because of Hashem. So what's the difference between when you say that about Kedusha, we say that about Klippa? Can you say my question? I'm saying everything in the world is like that. Not only Klippa. I can say the same thing about a Sefer Torah. This Sefer Torah wouldn't exist if not for Hashem giving it chayas. So could I say that this is not considered alive, not emes? Chas v'shalom. What was the difference? It's only there. It can't exist on its own.
It's with kisuim or not kisuim? It's like the Tuma has a lot of cover on his chayus, and bedvarim של קדושה, it's like קדושה revealed. It doesn't have so much kisuim.
Right. So, but the point is that it only is alive because Hashem keeps it alive. That applies to everything, to a Sefer Torah, to a shul, to the Beis Hamikdash. Everything is only there because of Hashem. So why do we say that it's not considered alive? So the answer is going to be, and I'll explain it in more detail, is that everything else Hashem gives it chayas. But with the things that are kedusha, like a Beis Hamikdash and a shul and mitzvahs and Torah and everything else, Hashem's chayis and the thing become one. They become so one that we can say that now the Sefer Torah itself is godly and is emes. But Klippa, it doesn't become one. It's like it's something separate, something from the outside that's giving it life, like the wind that gives life to the makes the piece of paper fly. The wind and the paper don't become one. It makes it fly, but it doesn't become one. But take, for example, the neshama and the guf. The guf becomes a live object because of the neshama. Yeah.
Is it like the difference of like pre-Matan Torah and after Matan Torah? Like with the
Same idea.
the
Yeah.
filling in the sticks, like
Yeah.
Kedusha didn't like infuse the
It
sticks.
didn't become part of it, right?
So what happens before Matan Torah? Like with the highest of Klippa and Kedusha? There was no Kedusha?
Let's first understand this, then we'll go back to that and get too complicated. But let me see if you understand what we're saying. So what we're saying is that everything in the world exists only because of Hashem, but the difference is when Hashem gives chayis to Klippa, the Klippa remains what it is, and it's something else that's giving it chayis. When Hashem gives chayis to a Sefer Torah, to the Beis Hamikdash, to anything which is a mitzvah, is no longer something else. This is Hashem manifesting, becoming one with the object of Kedusha. And therefore we can say that this is something which is emes and has chayis and is permanent because the godliness in it became one with the object. You have to chew it over. And tomorrow we'll go it over again. Yeah.
Does the object only become one with the godliness in it when it does a mitzvah with it, or just in and of itself?
Well, first of all, when it's an object which is a mitzvah, like tefillin, mezuzahs, Sefer Torah, anything like that, and then when a person does something with an object becomes and does a mitzvah, so like for example, a table, you're learning at the table, halachically this doesn't have any kedusha to it.
Right.
So obviously it's on a different level to what extent it becomes one.
Right.
But in general, you're speaking about things which have the definition halachically as kedusha. Anything which is kedusha, which is learning, davening, mitzvahs, siddur, Sefer Torah, Beis Hamikdash, mezuzah, tefillin, these things which are kedusha, and in general, getting chayis from anything which is kedusha means that Hashem and that became one. It's all Hashem, and therefore, the fact that it's permanent isn't just because of something else. It now has godliness in it. It is godly, and therefore, it's something permanent. Okay, that's a good sign that we're really thinking hard. And tomorrow we'll understand it better. Today, when you daven and you say, Ata Chayne Lodem Das, ask Hashem to give you more understanding. And Mincha again, and Ma'ariv again, and by tomorrow, it will be understanding.
shuffle for you.
Okay. Halacha d'Gedei.
I was working and we didn't reach the level that
Practice. Yeah.
אם אנחנו מקבלים נס, אז כאילו השם מוריד לנו הנס, שלנו, אז הוא מוריד לנו מהזכויות שיש לנו. אבל מה זה כאילו?